You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as today your Indiana Hoosiers defeated Marian by the score of 94-61 in their second and final exhibition game of the season, leading into Tuesday night's home opener against Florida Gulf Coast. Indiana got off to a really good start. They were locked in defensively. It took a little while to get going offensively, but then they found the rhythm. I thought Indiana ran some really nice sets, but they were really effective in transition this evening as they got out, created some turnovers, and then stretched the lead out by the 12 or 13-minute mark of the first half, and really put a lot of distance between them and Marian. And then about the 8-minute mark or so, it got a little loose defensively and rebounding, and it was 49-35 at half. But then they held Marian down for the first 10 minutes of the second half and continued to score the basketball at a clip to give them the final margin of 94-61. I thought overall the effort, the scheme, much better tonight in exhibition number 2 than it was in the first exhibition game. That's what you want. You always get better from game to game, and I think it just puts Indiana in a good position to start out the opening game here on Tuesday. I'm your host, the coach, Brian Tonsone. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. We'll break it down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU postgame show, which is dedicated to the memory of Coach Knight. So let's start the show the way we start every show, and that is with our banner moment. 3-point shooting. Banner moment. After the first exhibition, there was a lot of discussion about 3-point shots, and Coach Woodson was asked, and he gave an interesting answer about the 3-point shot. And tonight, I thought your Indiana Hoosiers took really good shots for the most part. Maybe 1 or 2 threes were a little rushed. Caleb Banks was hunting that 3-ball late in the second half. But I thought Indiana used it well. And the point I made in our community chat was they only took so many threes. And they were 4 of 7 from 3 in the first half, which isn't high volume, which a lot of people have been calling for. But they all were good shots in rhythm, and the transition game was working. And so the transition game working, you're not going to get a lot of threes if you get a lot of shots at the rim. So we got to keep that in mind when you talk about the volume of 3-point shots. I thought it was appropriate for tonight's game. I thought there were a couple late ones that I would have tried to maybe make a couple more passes before settling for that. But here's the thing. Where's the 3-point shot going to come from? It might come from our front line. Our starting guards and C.J. Gunn didn't hit a high number of them, but Malik Renew, awesome. And I'll tell you what, the second banner moment, or the icing on this banner moment, was when they ran a little floppy action and Mgbako came out from under the rim, caught at the 3-point line, heel, toe, and shot the ball. It wasn't an inside-out 3. It was a 3 designed off of a down screen. They had a post-up available as well. But Mgbako also – the transition threes were there tonight. So 3-point shooting, that's the banner moment for me this evening as your Indiana Hoosiers won their second game. Our banner moment today. Got so excited about the 3, I jumped the ad music. Our banner moment today, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Homefield Apparel. They're in the 7th season of sponsoring the Assembly Call, and their 3rd as a presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. Homefield has the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you will find anywhere, and since IU is their flagship school, you know more high-quality gear with unique IU logos from the past is always right around the corner. Some nice hats just came out, by the way, snapback hats. But it's not just IU. Homefield's product line extends to well over 150 colleges and universities, Colts, their core collection, and much more. I just got notice that another shipment is heading my way. Birthday gifts that I made my mother buy me. But no matter what you buy, you'll know it'll be comfortable and the colors will last. You're supporting the Indiana-based company that came up through the Kelly School of Business and isn't shy about showing its love for the Hoosiers. So go to homefieldapparel.com. Use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, The website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. Okay, now it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening shots from the rest of our team. Andy, what's your bottom line on tonight's exhibition win for the Hoosiers?
Yeah, it was, I think, a more well-rounded performance than what we saw in the first game. I think, in stretches that mattered, what they were doing offensively was pretty crisp. And you look at guard play. A wise person once told me that it's a guards game, and it wasn't a guard scoring game tonight. But the trio of Xavier Johnson, Trey Galloway, and Gabe Cups combined for 19 assists and 0 turnovers. In a game where IU had 25 assists on 32 made baskets. And I think, whether intentional or not, I think this is a game that those guys, with the exception of Cups, but as Trey and X, we can probably think, it'd be great to see them score a little bit more. But to me, this is a game where those guys are trying to get other people involved, ramped up, getting some confidence, and really taking advantage of where IU, had the biggest advantage, and that was on the front line. I thought, to your point on the 3-point shooting, there was a couple that X passed up that later led to a three for somebody else. Again, I think in quote unquote real games, you probably want him to take that shot, but it felt like those guys made a concerted effort to get other guys going tonight. I think that's a great sign from a chemistry standpoint, a leadership standpoint, if nothing else. So was really impressed with those guys. And obviously you don't get assists if guys are knocking down shots. So, credit to the bigs for being able to score in a variety of ways there, but really thought it was a solid, and I know we'll talk about the defense later, but again, I kind of felt like when it mattered and when they really wanted to turn things on, the defense could be dominant. They did a lot of switching, which was interesting and felt like a different wrinkle than what we've seen before. But beginning of the second half, forced 2 shot clock violations in the first handful of possessions, and really kind of it seemed like the message in the locker room was to kind of come out, take things away, and was impressed how they were able to do that. So I think lots of positives on both ends of the floor. Certainly the size of the competition, different things like that. There were some nuances there that I'm sure we'll discuss, but I thought overall come away from this game feeling a little bit better. And you saw them build on things and improve from game 1 to game 2, which I think is a positive. And for a group that you expect to continue to improve a lot from game 1 to game 30 over the course of the season, I think it's at least a positive sign based on what we saw tonight.
Ryan Phillips, what's your rant on this evening's exhibition victory?
Yeah, I mean, some good and some bad, I think. I thought, they handled the competition. This is an NAIA team. I think much worse competition than you saw in the last one, but it is an exhibition, so you're out there working on things. So some good and some bad. I think they gave up way too many rebounds. But I do think the second half was a much better version of Indiana. And I think that there was about a 5-minute stretch at the end where it was kind of like, all right, this is over. Let's kind of limp to the finish. So some of those things are a little convoluted. What I would say is Kel'el Ware started very slowly in this game. It did not look comfortable in the offense, did not look comfortable when he was rolling to the hoop or whatever. He came out in the second half, was a different player. And if you can somehow get him to start that way, I think Indiana's going to be very happy with the player they got in the transfer portal. He's just so talented and he's so big that I think that it's almost like he doesn't realize how easy this game can be for him. And you started seeing that click in the second half, and you're just hoping that's not something he has to relearn every game based on the opponent. But the thing I took away from this was, Coach, we've both discussed this and kind of got a lot of negative feedback, but Mgbako is the best player on this team. And I don't mean, and I texted you guys, I don't mean he's going to be the MVP. I don't mean he's going to be the guy who maybe has the best stats or whatever. Watching that kid play is a lot of fun because his basketball IQ is ridiculous. His talent level is ridiculous. He makes things look so easy. I mean, he's 5 of 8, 3 of 4 from 3, 2 of 2 from the free throw line. Like, he just kind of, it's almost like he floats. Like, he just knows where to be. He knows what to do. He's always in the right spot. And then he's not forcing the action. When he gets it in a good place, he does something with it. And I think that there were a couple times he drove tonight and didn't get a call that he'll definitely get during the season. I think relative to the competition, the officials didn't want to blow the whistle every single time there was a foul. And so I think that he probably got fouled on, but they weren't going to call it. He's just such a top 10 recruit, a reason why he's a projected lottery pick. Enjoy watching him play basketball, folks, because we're 2 games in, and he had 15 tonight. It was a quiet 15. I mean, quite frankly, he is just an incredibly good basketball player, incredibly talented, and a lot of fun to watch.
As we have discussed, we did a segment in one show about what to watch for in exhibition games. We're going to say over and over again, it was an exhibition game and the quality of competition and all that, but you look for some trends, and the trends from game 1 to game 2 were a lot better on both offense and defensive ends, and with both Ware and Mgbako, as you mentioned. But let's dive into some of the bigger storylines from today's game. But before we do, just a quick reminder to make sure you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. It comes out every Sunday, even in the off-season. We'll email you a countdown of the most important IU basketball stories and news updates from the previous week. And premium subscribers get access to Tony Andrania's IU Film Room. That's why over 10,000 of your fellow IU fans have subscribed. If you're interested, which you should be, join for free today at assemblycall.substack.com. That's assemblycall.substack.com. So I'm going to go back, throw this back to you guys and take it where you want to go. But 2 storylines I'd like to talk about. First is Mackenzie Mgbako. And one of the things I thought really well is he let the game come to him today.
Both
he didn't get shots early, but he was okay defensively. He wasn't great. And there was a time when Woodson really got into him. I think 7-minute mark, 6-minute mark of the first half or something. If you could read lips, there was some language that Coach Knight would love to have heard about his closeout, which gave up a 3 when Marian started to make a run to make it a 14-point game. But I liked that. Within the game, he got better. And like you said, Mgbako is just smooth. He loves that corner 3. I love his confidence in shooting the 3 in transition and in the offense. But I love it, too, when he's got a long way to go to be a good basketball player defensively. But he didn't let it bother him, and then he made some nice plays in the second half. So your guys' thoughts on Mgbako? I know, Ryan, you talked a little bit about him, but if you want to go more in depth about his game.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I think, you see what you can get with him from a floor spacing standpoint. And there's been so much talk about shooting with this group, but there was a play, I think it was somewhat early second half. You got a ball screen on the wing with Galloway and Ware. The defense kind of collapses as they're trying to figure out, take away the roll. And Galloway just diagonal pass right to Mgbako in the corner without hesitation, shoots it, drains it. I think those are and he's going to be a guy who can score in those ways, but also did some things off the dribble. And like you said, Coach, I thought he didn't force things offensively. And the defensive stuff, I don't think it's not lack of effort. I think it's just a little bit, and you see that it's in some ways, obviously talent level is not what you're going to see other places, but this was a team that was really small in Marian. And I don't know if that's why they switch, or they're trying to put guys in more difficult situations to be able to handle those things as they see them later on down the line. But I do think, he obviously, if the lineup works like it seems to be, at least to start games, he's going to have to get comfortable guarding smaller guys and moving his feet and find a way to effectively use the length that he has without reaching and those kinds of things. And so I thought it was, I think you got a kid who seems to have, as Ryan said earlier, a high basketball IQ, is willing to put forth the effort. So I think it's somebody who is going to make strides defensively, and just got to get to that understanding of you can't just quite get by on the athleticism in the way that you may have been able to before as you get into some of these situations. And he's guarding different kinds of players now than what he would have guarded in high school or even in AAU. And so I think it's a good, learning curve for him. But like I said, you certainly you feel good because he's not making mistakes out of lack of effort. It's just things that seem correctable on the defensive end, and the potential on the offensive side of things to be able to score in, at all levels is something that it's very easy to get excited about.
Ryan, do you think the defensive end is the hardest for high-end talent to get used to when they transition from AAU high school to
always
major college basketball?
Always undeniable that's the case, because these guys are taught and they're trained to showcase offensively, because the philosophy tends to be you can teach defense, or at least teach serviceable defense. There's going to be guys who are just great defenders naturally. Victor Oladipo comes to mind. Like, he entered college as a really good defender. But offense takes longer to develop if guys don't have any basis in that. And so when you're playing AAU, you're playing high school, your coaches may encourage defense, certainly in high school, but in AAU ball, you are there to showcase for coaches, and that comes on the offensive end. You go watch an AAU game. They have generally very high scoring, a lot of offense, a lot of showcase, a lot of showy stuff, and that's because you're trying to earn that scholarship. And so I think guys do get so focused. I mean, you play a high school season, it's about 30 something, 30 games max. You play AAU, I mean, you're playing over 100, 120, 200 games in a year. And so that's where your default is playing in these offensive heavy games. And so, yeah, learning defense is tough. That's why you default towards more athletic players, because it's easier to teach an athletic player to play defense, easier to teach an athletic guy how to recover, move his feet, all those things. So yes, the defensive end is the tougher part for these top end players, and that's completely fine. I think he's been fine so far. There's going to be mix-ups, and that's just being a freshman. No freshman steps on and is perfect, and so there's going to be mix-up. There's going to be struggles. That's going to happen. But I don't think his feet aren't in cement. He's moving. He's showing effort. He's trying to get there, and his length helps out on the perimeter as well. So he's already got some tools that help you defend there. Do I think he's going to be defending the opponent's best player? No. But he can help you on that end, and his length, as we're already seeing, Indiana's length and size is going to bother people. And I think their speed too, which is an underrated factor of this team. These guys can all run. Malik Renew, not a blazer, but other than that, look at the guys on the roster. Anthony Walker is shot out of a cannon every time he plays. So I do think with those three guys up front, you've got a lot of length, and then you've also got enough speed and transition to do things.
Let's transition to Kel'el Ware, a double-double. Again, be careful with numbers and stats and scores, all that in these exhibition games. But he had that. It was there. And he lacks a little physicality in the post, and he's really better with the pick and pop. The ISO, they ran a really nice ISO for him where they ran the double floppy, or the old Michigan State action where the guards went down. Then he was able to go one-on-one. Even his post moves, when he did the old Sigma move, he'd catch outside the lane, he'd open up, and then he would attack that way. He's better even in the post facing up.
Yeah.
But I thought
a guy who, I mean, to be
he was
fair,
locked in for the most part of the game, and I know that by when he goes with two hands for the rebound. In the first game, he was going one hand, and he'd let other people get it. Today, I thought he was actively seeking rebounds, which is a good habit going forward. We struggled rebounding tonight anyway, but I thought that showed that he was locked in. Your guys' thoughts on
he was
Ware, because I thought he had a really good game.
He was chasing blocks too, and I think that against a better opponent that could burn him. Focusing solely on blocks. We saw with Trace Jackson Davis in his first 2 years. He chased blocks and left his guy, left the backside open. But I do think that his length is going to discourage shots this year, even more than maybe Trace, because Trace was smaller than him. This is a guy he looks enormous out there. And I would say, I think that what I like about him, and I think he's going to get better at this. You're right. He's kind of shy in the post a little bit, as far as physicality goes, because he's not huge weight wise or strength wise. And so I think he probably gets pushed around a little bit. But I think when he realizes, I'm this much bigger than everybody, I can make some things happen. That's when that light goes on consistently for him. Life's going to get a lot easier. And because he's got the skill to do it too.
You mentioned before we went on the air that you said, I think this is a quote, that Ware is an interesting watch. Share your thoughts about why he's an interesting watch to you.
Yeah, he's kind of an enigma, it feels like.
Yes.
It just and I think you can see through two games, like you can see why things might not have worked out well someplace else. You can see why there can be some comments about, like, is he playing hard enough? Is he whatever? And I know Ant Wright just called out one play from the game the other night and had that about, this is a play he's got to finish and just not giving the effort. And I think you can see that at times. I think part of it is his stride's so long. He just he doesn't do a lot fast. And I
It
don't
looks
know
like he's
that
loping,
yeah,
not running.
and I
Right.
don't know that that's always the case, but I think you look at him in some ways, and I see how you could draw that conclusion. And so you look at some of that, but then I really thought he showcased a lot of what he can do, being able to step out and make shots, taking somebody off the dribble. Showed a little bit in the post. You can just tell it's the physicality really on both ends that is the question mark. Can he get comfortable or more comfortable with that? And being able to, to your point, Ryan, just understand how much bigger than everybody else is. You don't have to fall away. You don't have to do some of those things. And I think some of that I feel like came through in the scouting videos, or maybe it was the guy that Jared had on that covered Oregon, talked about he had a really nice like fall away shot in the post, and you kind of watch yourself thinking like, you're 7'3", why are you falling away?
Yeah,
but you kind of see it. He doesn't love the contact, and even there was a play where he kind of took a second and gathered on a play in the lane, and it was like, he didn't realize either that he had that much time, or like you don't have anything to worry about where you've got the ball. So some of the quotes from Woodson after the game, they talked about they really been getting on him about being more aggressive offensively, and like some of the things they saw in that regard tonight. And I think if that's what they're focusing on with him, I think it's fair to be encouraged by what you saw. And I just think the other thing that you've got to do is figure out how you get him comfortable with the physicality needed to, score in the post, but also to be a rebounder who's not relying on the fact that you're just bigger than everybody else to go get rebounds, positionally being where you need to be and not being pushed around on that end. But, the talent is undeniable when you watch some of the things that he's doing. And so, like I said, you can see every argument that was ever made about him in the offseason of like, well, I don't know about his motor, but damn, he's really talented. And here's all the things that he can do that other guys his size cannot do. And so it just, over the course of the season, you just got to figure out which guy are you going to see the most of as you go through from game to game, and even from segments of the game to segments of the game. But, through a couple games, it's hard not to be excited about it. And from a purely statistical standpoint, again, against a team he's significantly bigger than, in 26 minutes, he had 20 points and 11 rebounds. He's a unique talent, and I think that's probably what makes him an interesting watch, to go back to my initial comments.
Yeah, I think, you look at why he's not so powerful in the post and think this is a guy who probably grew up thinking he was going to be Kevin Durant, and probably is a perimeter face-up guy based on his pedigree and what he's done. Now he's playing somewhere, where he's going to have to play some straight up post. And I think that's why, just watching his highlights, why we all figured Renew would be the guy in the post and he would be maybe one of the perimeter guys, just because that's what, his game is more attuned to. So when he's in there, yeah, it does look a little, why are you going for finesse instead of power? But that's probably just what he's always done. He's been more of a face-up guy. And so he's going to have to learn that, because even in the NBA at his size, he's going to have to go back to the basket sometimes. But I think that it would be, a couple times we saw him tonight, especially early, with Renew in the post. They were in the pick and roll with Ware, and he just rolled into the post, and now you got 3 out, 2 in, and it's a crowded post. It's not easy to score out of that. And you saw them the first 5 minutes kind of struggle to figure out the offense. I'd rather have him pop on that and stay out on the perimeter and maybe take somebody off the dribble, or, pop for a 3, or move the ball and keep it going and let Renew be the post guy. So we'll see how that all develops. They're all learning to play with each other still. And he's learning essentially how to play college basketball again after not playing a whole lot last year.
And another, and with him, just real quick, one sequence in the second half, kind of like early second half, kind of encapsulates it, right? Gets the ball in the post, kind of falls away, misses a shot, then just goes over the top of everybody and gets a rebound within the next, maybe even the offensive rebound, or one the next, and then hits like a soft baseline jumper. And it's like, what in the world? Like, you just look at it as like, you think, is there anything that he can't do at times? And then you just, like I said, if they can get him to be a little bit more physical in the post and get comfortable being able to score at least a little bit there, couple that with the things that he can do from a face-up standpoint, you've got a really, really difficult player for people to guard. And so, excited to see. Staff seems to feel like they're getting through to him with things they're focusing on in practices and seeing it in games. And I think that was one of the questions with him coming in. So a good early sign.
The last storyline here in segment one that I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on is, if you agree with me, this team's athleticism. Whoa, it is fun to watch. Obviously, Indiana's going to lose some games, have some poor play, but the guys that they're playing can really move on the basketball floor. You go all the way down to Caleb Banks, who struggled in some aspects tonight to get his feet wet in his first play of this year defensively. But the energy and the length and the athleticism and the speed was really exciting today. Your guys' thoughts on the athleticism that we're seeing early in the season?
Yeah, you got a lot of different ways you can play, and I think tonight was a little bit different because you didn't have Sparks, so you saw a little bit more of some of these smaller lineups where they really, once he took Renew out, rested him a little bit, put him back in for Ware at the 5. But you saw some of those guys play with Anthony Walker and with Caleb Banks in a little bit smaller setup. I just think the length and what they can do defensively, I wouldn't say they pressed a little bit. They really just picked up full court. Were really able to cause some havoc there just with ball pressure and some of the length that they have. And I tell you, watching a couple of the games last weekend of the scrimmages that were out there, you look at an Arkansas, not bringing that up just because Purdue lost, and Tennessee even playing Michigan State. Well, no, it didn't hurt anybody's feelings, but and even Tennessee, they were missing some guys, but just like the level of athleticism that some of those SEC teams have, and it's not unique to the SEC, but you kind of look at how the Big Ten has struggled in some of these settings and how teams in a league like that are constructed. And you can see why. You've got more interchangeable pieces. You've got more of that length and really wanting to get out and run. And I thought IU did some really good things in transition. And they feel a little bit, I say that with a team that we've talked about how much they want to play through the post and some of those kinds of things. But really outside of that, from a physical makeup standpoint, they feel a little bit less like a Big Ten team than maybe they have in recent years, which is probably a good thing, to be honest. And so that's kind of what
might take some lumps in conference, but that's
you're going to get games, and I think that's why it's good to have a guy like Sparks in games when it's going to get super physical. He's a guy that can give you what you need, and so I think they've got some of that. But yeah, I mean, watching some of the guys on the wing, they can continue. Mgbako, I don't think scoring is a question mark. You can get CJ Gunn he's certainly shooting it confidently. You can get him to make some more shots. Caleb Banks was clearly shaking some rust off in stretches tonight, but super active. Stepped out.
He really wants to score, by the way. He badly wants to score.
Yes, that very much seemed like the case. With
scoring gets you in the newspaper.
And I think Walker's shown some good things, I think more so than what anybody would have expected from him coming in. So just
offensive
a lot of athletic guys that can do different things on both ends of the floor. So very exciting from that standpoint for sure.
Andy, you bring a good point about the pressure and the pickup points. And even though we overhelped and flew by some closeouts at times, Marian had to work. They got worn down. They even coming out of the second half, you can wear teams down if you have some depth and you have some length. And then the other thing about being a non-Big Ten team, this quickly reminded me about Michigan State sometimes with their athletes. Yes, they have bigs, but they usually have more athletic bigs than we've seen the big post-up type play, physical play that you see in the Big Ten. It kind of reminds me of that kind of a mold of a team. Ryan, your thoughts on the athleticism as we see this team now for two exhibition games. We get ready for the regular season. It's been pleasing to me. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I do love the athletic. I think this is the most athletic team Indiana's had in a really, really long time. I mean, just on pure athleticism. You talk about, basketball skill, things like that. There have been more talented teams, but physically, I haven't seen it. I mean, I'm trying to think back to the last team that was this athletic. I mean, their great teams weren't this. The 2016 team wasn't this athletic. The 2013 team wasn't this athletic. I mean, it's insane. I mean, they've had 7-foot guy who can run the floor, shoot threes, and jump out of the gym. They've got, Malik Renew has added 4 inches to his vertical, is a lot faster than he was last year. Mgbako can do everything. Anthony Walker's a lightning bolt. Caleb Banks, we were marveling at his athleticism last year. It was just trying to contain it so he could, showcase the basketball skill part of it. CJ Gunn looks more athletic than I think anybody thought he would be when he stepped on campus. I mean, we saw it last year a little bit, but I mean, these guys, Trey Galloway, we've known is very athletic. I mean, these guys can all run, they can all jump, they can all, get down the floor. They can all put it in the basket. I mean, it's a very athletic team now. And again, on pure talent, just lining it up on paper, you're like, these guys are really talented. It's a matter of them all putting it all together. But this is a team that could easily get out in transition, score a lot of baskets in transition. It's whether or not they're able to do that in a Big Ten that largely prevents transition baskets. I mean, it's a very conservative conference as far as that goes. You're not going to get 100, games that are 95 to 85. It's a very slowed down, conservative conference when it comes to that kind of thing. But I think
a lot more difficult teams to guard.
Yes, and guarding is guarding well. And guarding is what gets you out in transition. It's and long rebounds and guarding. And I do think that this team has the opportunity to do that. We'll see. I do think if they rely on it too much and they play a Michigan State who shuts that down as well as anybody, you're going to run into trouble offensively. You've got to be able to do the other stuff offensively as well in this conference. So, but yeah, athletically, I mean, they're fun to watch. They really are. They're up and down, and they're deep. I mean, the athleticism runs very deep on this team as well. And I'll tell you what, Peyton Sparks looked a heck of a lot more athletic than he did on film last year as well. And hopefully get him back within the next few weeks. That doesn't sound like it's going to be months. It sounds more weeks, but yeah. So I love what I see from them athletically. This is the kind of team that Indiana hasn't had in a long time and had that pure athleticism.
Yeah. And, so we'd be remiss to not mention we did a remembering of Coach Knight last night. Andy, I'd like to get your thoughts at some point tonight for our listeners, maybe later in the show. But I thought it was a very good effort. I thought they really came out focused. I'm sure there was some conversation, a lot of different feelings inside and outside the program probably in dealing with that loss. But what Indiana did and the patches and all the stuff I heard that was going on at Assembly Hall, just a lot of good things there in remembrance of Bob Knight. But if you missed our show, go back and find that on YouTube or at Substack. I thought that was a really healthy thing for all of us to go through. But coming up here, as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's win in its exhibition final, we'll point out some meaningful moments you might have missed. Then we'll go inside the numbers and point out some of the most important stats from the game. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hey, this is Deron Davis. And what's the only thing better than dominating a Duke big man in the post? It's celebrated with friends afterwards. Join Gerard, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Hall call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thanks, Deron. Always brings a smile to our face.
A shame Gerard couldn't make it tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gerard's out
He's
camping,
out camping. That's right. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm the host, Brian Tonsoni, here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. We're breaking down Indiana's victory, 94-61 over the Marian Knights. It's now time for today's meaningful moments that you might have missed.
Meaningful moments that you might have missed.
This segment's brought to you by our friends at Hoosier Ticket Project. They help individuals and families experience Indiana University athletic events in person for the first time through the generosity of alumni and fans. To learn more about how you can donate money or extra tickets to help create meaningful moments for other IU fans, visit HoosierTicketProject.org. That's HoosierTicketProject.org. I'm going to point out something. It's kind of hard to see when you're not in the arena, but there was a time when Mgbako really was messing up defensively. I think he stayed too long and didn't switch, and then he was late. There was a pass back out, and he was late reacting, and then Coach Woodson takes a timeout. But heading to the timeout huddle, you saw Malik Renew put his arm around and either do some consoling about what was about to happen in the huddle from Coach Woodson, or he was doing some instruction of how they should have handled that switch. Either way, it's always important when you have one of your better players, a young player still, a sophomore, taking a leadership role. Later in the game, during the timeout, you saw Gabe Cups running a huddle at the free throw line during a foul shooting situation. There's a coach's kid, a young man not afraid to stick his nose in there and tell his teammates and hold his teammates accountable. You see the energy from Anthony Leal, even though sometimes he doesn't get the run that everyone might want him to do or he would do. He's a leader on the bench. Those types of things will help Indiana be the best they can be when you have that kind of leadership on the floor. And I just caught that as the TV camera was moving away. And those are things that are not in the stats anyway, but they're very, very, very important. Fellas, you got any meaningful moments that you'd like to share?
I mean, we talked about, but Malik Renew hitting 2 3-pointers is enormous just for
I'm not sure anyone missed those though, but
yeah,
still.
no, you're right, but I mean, I think just how momentous that is if he's able to do that. And you mentioned it off the top. It's that the guards didn't hit any threes, but the big men did, and that's again just huge for Indiana. And that's a monumental thing. And if you want something that people may have overlooked, it's Caleb Banks hitting 2 threes as well. We talked about last year with his athleticism and size and ability on the defensive end. If he can knock down threes, that takes him to a new level. He was 2 of 4 on the night.
Andy, anything come to mind?
Yeah, a couple sequences from Gabe Cups, who quickly becoming a fan favorite. But there was one, I think it was his early first half, not long after he'd come in, basically got a steal almost immediately after he came in the game. And really but didn't force the issue on the play, just waited enough, showed patience to wait for CJ Gunn to cut down the middle of the lane, gave it to him for a layup. Another play not too long after that, he gets in the passing lane, gets the ball to Ware, this was a case where he got really good position, in the post early and had an aggressive move for a dunk there. And then back-to-back lobs in the second half, one to Ware and one to CJ Gunn on the play after that came off a really good rebound and outlet pass from Ware. So just continue to see a lot of good things from Cups. Certainly the competition is going to step up as things go, but I think it's hard not to like what you see from him just from a leadership standpoint, as you mentioned, Coach, but also just a heady passer and really showed good patience, waiting for things to develop and then finding guys, putting them in position to score. And the assist numbers obviously speak to that as well.
His strength and lateral foot speed was surprising to me when he's guarding ball handlers. And I know we'll see that when he goes up against Walker at Michigan State and some of those matchups if that is at the level that is needed. But it's still further along than I thought when I first saw Gabe Cups. Another moment that I was able to pick up, Indiana got a little three happy there in the second half, and we're taking some threes. And then Jackson Davis, I saw that he went to the G League, and I have that in my mind. He calls the little, when you see him do the dribble, there's a couple actions you can try to see, and I know if you're listening to the audio podcast, you can't see me on TV, but when you see his hand like a dribble motion, that's when they're going to run a little rub cut and want to go inside to the post. And there's another little thing that they do when when the point guard touches their chest, another action. And they ran one of those actions, and I think that's just really good coaching there. Okay, the threes are happening, a couple wild ones. You missed 2 or 3 in a row. Now let's go back inside. And I think good programs, good coaches call that. And I think that came from X, and I saw Woody doing one of the others, and they kind of communicated to each other. And what happened in that, they had a post play called, but then Xavier had a drive, and that's when he banked one in from the left wing, I think, and kind of settled Indiana back down after they took 4 or 5 threes. Those are little things that I like to see. And if X can understand what's needed within the game, when to push it, when to go in the post, when to run some different actions, that really alleviates some of the things Coach Woodson can keep thinking some different things. If you have that coach on the floor like that, and that's what a 6-year point guard should do, that was an interesting thing as well. Sorry if I'm revealing any secrets with any of the calls, but I'm guarantee you that Connor Stallions or someone from Michigan State's going to watch all these films.
Got
and
it
see
already.
the same thing.
They already got it. They already got it.
They already got it. But thanks for reminding me. And Michigan State, if you are watching the show, you owe me some money then. All right. Any other moments you want to bring up before we hit Andy?
Yeah, I got one other quick one late. I think this all happened in the same sequence. The way I'm still, it's exhibition season for me, taking notes too. So, but on one end, you got massive block from Anthony Walker. I think a lot of this speaks to the athleticism, but I think also speaks to how well the second unit and how active they've been. He just gets a massive block. Try to throw it ahead to CJ Gunn. He loses the ball, but he doesn't give up on the play. Comes right back, steals it back. Then he misses a three later in the possession, but Banks goes all out to get an offensive rebound. Just kind of activity level. And those guys played more minutes in this game than they're likely to in most games during the season. But, when we talk about athleticism and some of the spark that you get from those guys, just a series of things where guys not giving up on plays, impacting the game in a lot of different facets. And I think one of the things that makes you excited, Woodson had some good things to say about the second unit, essentially saying they've given him confidence. They've all given him confidence to be able to play him and things like that. So I just thought a series of just kind of hustle type plays from those guys, which is exactly what you're going to need from them when they get into games against tougher opponents.
Yeah, good stuff. Next, it's time to go inside the numbers, and this year it's brought to us by Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. If you live in Bloomington or the surrounding areas and you want your taxes done right, contact our friend and Chat Mob Hall of Famer Megan Mahaffey and her team in Bloomington, Bedford, and Martinsville by calling 812-339-3334 or by visiting jacksonhewitt.com. Okay, I like the no turnovers, we had 2 turnovers for the whole game. Again, we go back to that exhibition conversation too, but it's a trend, right? When you have an outstanding 26-2 kind of thing, even playing NAIA school, I thought Indiana valued the basketball. And that's going to keep that number around 10 or 11. If you have that kind of attitude, those kind of habits, it's going to keep it down around 10, underneath 10. That's winning formula against better competition. So I thought that was probably the most important number to me, as well as the 3-point shot. What numbers stuck out to you guys? Ryan?
How about 21-25 from the free throw line? I like that. I like that a lot. And
got to play to your audience
habit
by throwing out the free throw shooting stat early on. That's good.
Less yoga, more free throw shooting, right, guys? 9-17 from 3 to 53%. I'd like to see 20 attempts. But make it 9-17 against a team you're much bigger than are going to get easier baskets against us. That's great. But I would like that. I like that personality for this team. And as Andy mentioned, again, a big one is 25 assists on 32 made baskets is huge too.
Andy?
Yeah, I think you guys brought this up on the post game from the first exhibition, but blocks and steals, 9 steals, 6 blocks. Which really led to, in addition to IU's complete lack of turnovers, a 22-0 disparity on points off of turnovers. And so I think you look at some of that defensive activity level and things like that, that really was helpful in doing that. And then fast break points, 27-0. We talked about how well this team played in transition. Certainly speaks to that a bit as well. And so I think, a couple things there that really just, I think, underscore some of the athleticism conversations that we had earlier, and the ability to play in transition. I thought those things were big positives for IU.
I think part of it too is everybody on the floor can handle the ball and pass. And I think that leads to transition as well, because guys can just get a rebound and look up as opposed to have to find the point guard, then we go. Whereas, the only guy I think that you maybe not trust in the open floor with the ball is Ware. Other than that, I think everybody, and even he isn't bad. So I do think it's a huge benefit that these guys can all move the ball.
I think that's a key point in the half-court offense as well as transition. The ability for the bigs to throw those back cuts passes to, this is a good passing team so far. If that continues, that 26 assists kind of shows that trend. I think that's extremely important. But boy, isn't it fun to see that rebound and Anthony Walker just peeling out, circling back out, turning and going, and then the idea of pace tonight was fantastic. I thought when they got rebounds and steals, they were looking to go. And something that we have talked about for years about, we talk about modern basketball. I thought there was a lot of examples of that tonight. Knock on wood, that hopefully that continues. I think one of the concerning numbers is the rebounding. We talked about it all off season. We thought with athleticism and that with the bigs that rebounding would be better. It's kind of odd when you shoot a lot of three-pointers or you're shooting a lot of deep shots. Sometimes there's some long rebounds, and even if you blocked out or sometimes those numbers can be skewed a little bit. But I still would like to see that number. I think we only out-rebounded them 36-34 on tonight's game. So if you're looking for a number that was a little concerning, I think that would be it. Coach Walsh talked about it coming out. And is it Amanda Foster? Was that the young lady who is?
Yes.
She asked some really good
She's great.
questions about meaningful moments if you missed a halftime. Like sometimes you watch these halftime reporters and they don't ask anything worth a darn. I thought she asked some really good questions. But Coach Walsh said there that they were giving up those two long rebounds. I thought they got it fixed a little bit in the second half, but rebounding numbers was a little bit concerned. All right, coming up on Assembly. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
We are going to give out our game balls and our Hoosier Hustle Award, discuss a lingering question or two, and look ahead to Indiana's upcoming opponent. That's all next here on Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Ethan Happ, and I never listen to the Assembly Call, especially the episodes that Ryan is on.
You're listening to the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show, and yes, we're still in exhibition season as I so rudely cut off my co-host Andy Bottoms from a really good point that he was going to make. Andy, would you like to follow up on that?
I mean, I expect that from Ryan,
segment?
but not you. I mean, that seems but no, I was going to say I'd be interested to go back and look a little bit. I think the long threes or the threes and long rebounds is an explanation for some of the rebounding issues, but I don't think it's all of it. I think sometimes that's easy to look at a team that shoots, well more than half of their shots from 3-point range, and I do think it was a factor on some of them, but I also think it's easy in games like this to basically rely on your athleticism. I'm just going to go get the rebound and some of those kinds of things. So. I think maybe not as much of a red flag as the stats might indicate, but I don't think it's nothing either. And even if you look in the second half when there were a lot more, they missed more 3-pointers. They were just 2 of 16 from 3 in the second half. Rebounding was still only, 21 to 19 in that half. So, they got 6 offensive rebounds in the second half versus, and 6 in the first. So somewhat evenly distributed, but, one of those things, maybe you see something different when you go back and look at it. But,
when your effort on defense and blocking out and rebounding waver, which it did for about 2 5-minute segments of each half, you'll give up some of that. I think some of that's what you're talking about. Yep. I'm Coach Brian Tonson. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. We're breaking down Indiana's win over Marian in their final exhibition game by a score of 94-61. It's now time for our game balls, presented by our friends Allie and James at Bloom Environmental. As we enter the colder months and begin to stay indoors a bit more, they want to make sure that everyone knows about radon, a colorless, odorless, radioactive gas that is the leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers. It enters buildings through cracks and gaps in the foundation and through service pipes of homes. Contact Bloom Environmental today and mention Assembly Call for a free radon test kit and mitigation estimate. Learn more at www.bloomenviro.com. All right, Andy, we'll start with you. Who gets your game ball?
I think a few. I mean, certainly in a game where you've got a lot of guys with high point totals, a number of guys to pick from. But I think you got to go with Kel'el Ware. Just led the team in points, led in rebounds, shot the ball well, 8 of 13 from the floor, and so I just thought he had a really strong game. Grew into the game a little bit as it went. He even talked about playing a little too fast in the first half, the first part of the game. but certainly a guy who impacted it on both ends of the floor, and really strong game from him. So that's my choice.
Ryan, who gets your game ball?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ware as well. I think there's several really good candidates, but you finish with 20 and 11. He had 15 points in the second half, really kind of helped them. I mean, I don't think the game was ever in doubt, but that big run at the beginning of the second half was a lot on him. But 11 boards, a block, in 26 minutes he was plus 33. That's a solid night at the office for Kel'el Ware. So I'll give it to him. But I do think there were a couple guys in the starting lineup he could have given it to.
I think the whole front line could. I'm going to go with Ware as well for all the reasons that you guys said, and we'll make it unanimous. But I think the whole front line, I thought Renew got us off to a good start with some threes. And Mgbako, we've talked about how smooth he is, and again, shooting some threes in transition and on kickouts. And then, Ware just looked a little more locked in for a majority of his time, despite how interesting to watch he is from the Andy Bottoms circle. So it goes our game ball tonight. Kel'el Ware, congratulations. You have your first assembly call game ball. And now,
The Hoosier Real Hustle Award.
Hi, this is Anthony Leal, and it's time for the Hoosier Hustle Award. But first, I have some exciting news to share about our friends at Evansville Security Services. They've been acquired. They are now part of the team at Security Pro 24/7, which provides trusted and reliable security for your event or business, from Bloomington, my hometown, to Evansville, where Coach Calvert Chaney grew up, and everything in between. Just like hustle can't be measured by stats, prevention can't be measured either, but it has a huge impact on your bottom line and peace of mind. So let the security pros at Security Pro 24/7 help you prevent a bad outcome today. Visit securitypro247.com to learn more. That's securitypro247.com. And tell them Anthony Leal sent you.
all right, it's now time to give out our Hoosier Hustle Award. Ryan, we'll start with you.
Anthony Walker for me. He had 8 points, but he had 6 rebounds, an assist, 2 blocks, and I just felt like in the 23 minutes he played, you knew he was on the floor the entire time. And I also think when he came in, he provided a huge lift for Indiana. They were kind of it was never bad, but they were kind of just scuffling a little there for a while at the beginning. He came in, it really energized the team. I have a feeling he's going to get a lot of these this year. He just seems like a really focused, energetic player that just doesn't stop. And I really love the way he plays. I've been pleasantly surprised. I thought he'd be good, but I've been pleasantly surprised by just how good.
Andy, who are you going with for Hoosier Hustle Award?
Yeah, a lot of good options here as well. I was leaning Walker, but I'll give a little bit of credit to Malik Renew. Actually, there was I felt like there were times in the first exhibition game that there were opportunities for guys to get on the floor, and they really just didn't. And there was a sequence, I think, early in the game. He dove on the floor. I know everybody's kind of like, okay, please don't hurt yourself diving on the floor in this game, but but I thought he did a little bit of everything. Shot the ball well, got some solid, 5 rebounds, a couple assists. I don't know. I just thought he was working hard defensively to guard guys a lot smaller than he was. So no issue with the Walker pick, but at least give a nod to Renew for how he played tonight.
So we got 1 vote for Walker, 1 for Renew. I am going to go with Walker as well. The 6 rebounds solidified it for me. There was a lot of good play, a lot of good hustle tonight. I thought their stances, their efforts were pretty good for game 2. Obviously, still some need to improve in those areas, but Anthony Walker has really impressed me. As you don't know what these guys look like, and now you see him for a couple times, he's going to play more than maybe what a lot of people thought, and he'll be there. I don't know how much he'll get when the games get to be Kansas and Auburn and some of those, but I think when he goes in, he's going to play really, really hard. So Anthony Walker is 2 for 2 in the Hoosier Hustle Award. And so now, before we get to our lingering question, I am going to come back to you now, Andy, for a time to share with our listeners your thoughts on the passing of Bob Knight. You were not able to be with us last night on the Remembrance Show. Tough news 2 nights ago. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the show. I thought you guys did a good job with that. I know I would echo the same about Scott and Galen. I thought some of Galen's words at the end of the Crimson Cast probably summed up things as well as anybody in terms of how, synonymous Knight really became with IU basketball over the course of time. For me, I think I would say a lot of the same things that you did, Coach, on the show in terms of, when I think of Coach Knight, I think of my dad. That's what, that was while, sitting down to watch the games on Channel 4 and watching the coaches show the day after some of these games and some of those things. I just, that was my initial thought, like that he was tied very closely to that and ties back to a time when, you kind of fell in love with basketball. And I also remember when Knight got let go, my dad and I were out golfing and we were just kind of having a conversation. I said, it's odd because like, I don't know what Indiana basketball is without Bob Knight. And so we kind of, talked about that a little bit and obviously in doing this, stuck with the program, didn't walk away from it by any stretch, but like those two things were inseparable for me at that point because one had never existed without the other. And so you try to figure those things out and, keep his legacy in some kind of perspective as you watch some of these older games. And Ryan, you talked about that as well with, during the COVID year where there was no tournament, going back and watching some of those old games. And I watched some others that we didn't talk about on the show just as a way to look back on some of those. And so I think from a basketball perspective, you look at the tactician that he was, some of the preparation and even watching some of the videos that Tony shared in the film room this week were just the way he saw the game was different than what a lot of other people were doing. And it spoke to, how well he was able to teach it ultimately to people. And I, like you, Coach, you joked about not playing zone. I can honestly say I certainly didn't coach at the high school level or anything like that. Never once taught a team that I coached in 10 years of teaching kids. Never once taught zone. Never once thought about teaching somebody to play zone. None of it. So I feel good about that in the long run as you look at it that way. And so it's been great to hear some of the tributes and some of the stories. And things like that for somebody who basically built and meant so much to something that we hold in really high esteem and that we clearly hold dearly because we're doing this show. And so, it's not unexpected, doesn't make it any easier in those situations. But also given some of the things that you'd heard about how his health had declined and some of those kinds of things, even hearing Pat Knight talk about, when he went back to, when we were at that Purdue game, just, would he, how was he going to handle it? What state of mind was he really in at that point and just having a tough time. So, feels you can take some solace in the fact that he's at peace now and not dealing with some of those things. I know a handful of folks talked about, the impact of Alzheimer's and things like that and kind of what it takes from somebody that you've watched. And so, you can, again, hopefully take a little bit away from knowing that there's a piece there that probably hasn't been for a little bit, but yeah, certainly sad has made me reminisce about a number of things, whether that's games or situations that he, reacted to and watching some of the videos, watch that the golf outtakes YouTube video, which is just like and 9 to 10 minutes of just pure laughter. And that, so, but no, I thought you guys had brought up a lot of good things. So at least off the, off the top of my head, that's kind of been what I thought about. But like I said, more than anything else, it just made me think about my dad.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say, guys, there's no assembly call without Bob Knight. And it's not that, we talk about him. It's just what the program became and all that and what it meant to you guys and what he meant to you guys and all of that. We certainly wouldn't be here, I don't think, without all those, how close it was to you guys to have the motivation to do something like this.
Andy, the thing I'm gathering from all the stuff I'm reading, and Iman Brennan wrote a really nice piece in his Substack, that it does remind you of relationships, of the people you attended games with and who you got your start with. And I think there's a lot of Indiana fans that had family members that they were close to that brought them into Indiana basketball, because Bob Knight was doing so many things. I think that was just really, really well said, and I really appreciated all of the our talks yesterday, Ryan, with Tony and Rick. It was really helpful as you deal with how you feel about Coach Knight. So lingering questions. I think I'll pose this to you guys. How much of this will, go forward into the regular season, which is a schedule that is tougher than any in the 3 years Coach Woodson has been here? And we'll get a preview of Florida Gulf Coast before we leave, but they beat USC at USC in the opening game last year and had a really good start of the season and have a lot of players coming back. So the lingering question has to be, how much of this that we've seen, the good and some of the stuff that Indiana struggled with, carries over, and how soon does it get better? Ryan, your thoughts on where Indiana is just after these 2 games?
We'll know a lot on Tuesday, I think, just because the competition level is going to ratchet up quite a bit. What I'll say about this, this team has the potential to lose a couple of these games early on, just because, and not because they're not good, not because they're not talented. It's hard to get a bunch of guys who've never played together before on the same page immediately. And I think that we've started to see some better stuff, some better flow to things in these 2 games. But again, competition level has to be taken into effect. What's going to happen when a legitimate defense gets thrown at these guys offensively? Are they still going to be able to do the things that they're trying to do? So it'll be very interesting. I have said, I think that this team, we won't really know what we have until January. I think you can see the athleticism, you can see the skill, you can see the talent. That's not in question. The question is just how well do they play together, and how quickly can they put it all together? And we don't know. I think that's the beauty of this, is that especially this year more than any other that we've done, is we have no idea how this is going to all turn out. It's a little scary, but at the same time, it's kind of fun that we just don't have a direct evidence of what this is going to be. I think we like what we've seen so far, but we'll see how that translates, when the games are real.
I felt a lot better after tonight.
Agreed.
With the way they played offensively, that it's there, it's in the playbook. You kind of saw that Woodson wants to play differently. You kind of saw that tonight, I thought. So I think Indiana's in a better position than I might have thought they were going to be, with still – we got to see it, right? You and I have been saying that all the time. Jared gets mad at us for saying we got to see it. We got to see it, but we're going to still say it. Andy, where do you think Indiana sits 2 exhibition games deep?
Like you, I feel better after tonight, and I think this team is going to struggle in stretches, whether that's in games or parts of games. I think there's still enough new pieces. I didn't think you saw as many of the just miscommunication type things as you probably saw in the first game. And so I think you got to go in prepared for that. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't win these first few games, but you are playing, to your point, Coach, a different caliber of opponent than they've played before. Florida Gulf Coast should be one of the better teams in the Atlantic Sun. And then the Army game should be relatively easy. Certainly one that'll take on, maybe a little bit interesting meaning after this week. With that matchup. And then Wright State is really good as well. Had Holden, I think is the guy's last name. I think Tanner Holden is had played at Wright State, transferred to Ohio State last year. Things didn't really work out very well there, and he's back. But a talented player for them. So I think you're going to have a couple beatable but decent tests early. And I think that's a good thing for this team. I think this team is going to need that to be able to build up a little bit of resolve that they can get through difficult situations together, and some of that mentality. And I think as you watch this, I'm curious to see how much of this, kind of first unit, second unit thing that Woodson really sticks with. Tonight was a little bit different. You saw a little bit more mixing and matching just because you didn't have sparks, and you probably won't for these first couple games as well. So, just kind of curious to see what the rotations look like and if you see some different lineup combinations. But I also think the effort level that they showed for the most part in the game tonight is something that's going to help you overcome a lot of the struggles and the defense that they showed at times can help you overcome some of those struggles. So I think a lot of reasons to feel positive. I think there'll be some touch and go moments as you get through some of these where you're just going to have stretches where I just think they're going to struggle. But interested to see them play again against better competition and kind of figure out how much of the makeup of where they're taking shots comes from, how much of that is a factor of who you're playing, and things like that. But no, I think there's lots of reasons to be encouraged, but reasons to think like there'll be some growing pains as we go. And I think everybody thought that going in, so I don't think that's going to surprise anybody. I'm sure I will overreact in the moment, just as despite my my advice to the contrary a minute ago. But I do think we'll see some of that. And
do as I say, not as I do.
Absolutely. But no, some good early tests that I think become they're going to be important for this team to navigate, and some tough competition. And so I think that's a good thing, because that UConn game is one that's going to ratchet things up pretty quickly in the fourth game of the season. But I think at least being able to be tested a little bit here early is a good thing for this team.
Well, we'll be back with you next Tuesday night for a post-game show as the season opener occurs at Assembly Hall against Florida Gulf Coast. Number 147 in KenPom to start the season, and KenPom predicts an 11-point win for your Indiana Hoosiers, so buckle up. There's a likelihood that it's going to be a closely contested game until late. Hopefully it's a little wider and they just score a few points to get to that 11 backdoor cover, or whatever you want to call it. Pat Chambers, who used to coach at Penn State, is the Florida Gulf Coast. And like I said, they beat USC on the road to start last year and have most of their guys back. So that's going to be a little bit tougher than a lot of people think. They didn't close the season well last year. They ended up 17-15. The second half of their season, they kind of lost some of their momentum after a good start. But this is the highest they've been ranked in KenPom since 2018. Andy, do you know anything else you want to share about their personnel or anything? I haven't really. I looked at them about a couple of weeks ago and have since forgotten everything. So.
Yeah, I did not really. I haven't done a whole lot, other than I know they're picked fairly high in the conference, just as I've kind of looked through some things for bracketology purposes early in the season. I think with Chambers, you got a guy who, IU fans will know well, has had some success, a little bit of success there. As you mentioned, they fell off there, but so, like I said, I think it'll be a decent test. I think Chambers may have been at the helm. I don't know if he was for the one meltdown that IU had at home against Penn State that came up on one of the shows in the offseason, of one that you wish never happened, or he didn't do the show or something of that nature. So I feel like he was the coach then, but I could be wrong about that. But he's at least a guy who is familiar with the environment, what he's walking into, and can try to help prepare his team for it. But other than that, I don't know a great deal about them from a personnel perspective.
Just called up their roster. They have two seniors, a redshirt junior, and two juniors in their starting lineup. And most of those are coming back. 3 double-digit scorers and another one at 9.2. Their center, 6'10". Andre Weir. It looks like their leading scorer is a 6'1" guard named Isaiah Thompson, number 11 when you tune in or are at the game. So they are going to be an athletic team that is going to be a real good test for the Indiana Hoosiers coming up. Okay, fellas, it's time for our last call. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Before we get to that, remember to check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. Use the promo code HOME23 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Just sign up for the community, the email, all of that stuff is available for you to enjoy your Indiana Hoosiers. And Andy, let's start with you. What's your last thought on this exhibition win over the Marian Knights?
I think as you look at these exhibition games, we talked before about what you want to see going into these. And, like I said, I think IU has shown a lot of positives, giving people a lot of reasons to get excited about the team, which I think there have been other seasons we've walked into where it's like kind of drudge through the exhibitions. And it's like, in the Archie Miller era, let's say, became, you're worried a little bit of like, sometimes it was hard to get excited for the season. I think this team, because of the athleticism, because of some of those things that we talked about during the show, is going to be fun to watch. I don't know, as I said before, that you're not going to take some lumps at various times depending upon the opponent. But I think this is a team I'm really looking forward to watch grow. because I think there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of defensive potential for something that Woodson really wants to hang his hat on from a program identity standpoint. I think there's lots of reasons to get excited about this team. I think we're going to have to bear with them through some different times, but I think watching them in the exhibition season has only furthered my excitement for what the season is going to look like. Sure, somebody will replay this for me after a 2-game losing streak in the middle of January in Big Ten play, but I do think it's reinforced some of the positives that we had for this team coming in, and ultimately one that I'm excited to watch play out. And I think you'll see, while Trey and X have kind of taken a backseat to a certain extent as the captains, I think once the lights come on in the regular season, you'll see perhaps different versions of those guys who are a bit more aggressive on the offensive end and looking for their own shots just a little bit more. You don't want to totally turn the dial from what they're doing now to facilitate for other people. But I do think I'm not worried about those guys at this point in the general lack of scoring that they've had. And then just to kind of circle it back to a little bit of the Coach Knight stuff, I didn't mention this before. I think I actually saw somebody put it in the chat, and I've seen other people talk about this too. And you talked about the kind of community and the, family element. I think, again, as I kind of go back to thinking about my dad, like there were a lot of times he was not one to talk much on the phone, and my mom was a lot more the talker. And so you'd call home to see how everybody was doing and whatever. And you wouldn't usually get an in-depth conversation with him too often, but I always knew that if I wanted to get him talking, we could talk about IU basketball and what the team looked like, what we'd seen from them. And that was, I would say probably 85 to 90% of our typical, the time that we spent talking about anything on the phone was probably IU basketball related as time went on. And so I think it's a good reminder as we talk about this, that like most of the fun of all this is being able to share it with people. And so something to probably keep in the back of our mind, that there are probably more important things going on. But this is ultimately supposed to be fun and something that you can share with people that you love and friends and things like that. And so probably a good note to begin the season on. And like I said, probably one that somebody will need to remind me of at some point in the season. But for now,
we would never throw it in your face, Andy. I don't know who
100%, 100%.
Never.
Shut up.
Man.
Stop texting about something that you're mad about, and
we're on your
and do whatever. But ultimately enjoy this for those kinds of things and those relationships, because that stuff matters a whole lot more than whether they win or lose.
Ryan.
Guys, our next show will be actual basketball. Not that these weren't actual basketball, but these count. The new ones count. And it feels like it's been a very long offseason, given all the turnover on the roster. I mean, I think every year I say this was our longest offseason. I think I say that every year. And this year, I think it may have been. I do. I don't know. People say I complain about things. I don't agree. But with all the turnover and all the recruiting stuff and all of that, this has been a really long one. I mean, the roster wasn't set until a while after this last season ended. And I think that, we've had so much speculation of what this team will look like. And it's been so hard to talk about because so many new guys, so many guys that haven't played together, and we're finally going to get results. We're going to have a result to measure on Tuesday. It'll be an early result, but it'll be a result. I agree with these guys. I feel better today than I did after the first exhibition game. And I think this is a very deep, very talented, very athletic team. How well they play together, how well they do so many of the other things that lead to winning. It will be, they'll get the chance to prove it. And I think that's the best part of this is, when you head into a regular season, you don't know what's going to happen, and hope springs eternal for pretty much everybody in the country. And Indiana is certainly in that, on that list of teams where it's anything could happen with this team. And so I think the most beautiful part of all of this about college basketball, about sports in general, is now it's just on those young men to prove it. It's up to them. How they do is up to them. They are as talented from a pure talent standpoint as pretty much anybody in the country. As far as talent, they probably fit in that top 10, top 15, pure talent wise. I mean, how many teams have two potential lottery picks? Not many. And now it's just on those young men to go out there and execute and play together and find, joy in getting to do that. And so that's what makes me happy. That's why I love sports. That's why I love college basketball, is it's in their hands, and we can sit here and we're gonna yell about it, gripe about it. Mostly I'll be yelling. These guys will be pretty calm. But that's all on them, and I think that's awesome. And I think that's so cool. And those guys sitting in that locker room know the next time they take the floor, it's going to be a real game at Assembly Hall. And that's pretty cool. Luckily, they got a whole weekend to think about that and get ready for it.
Well, we'll see everybody on Tuesday. Thanks to over 300 people here joining us on a Friday night for an exhibition game. We will see you again next Tuesday. But that's going to do it for us this evening. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall.com. And don't forget to go to join.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for the music you hear on the show. Special thanks to John Ringer of RiggsDesign.com for designing our logo. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU Hoops again with you on Tuesday night.
Take it from me, Jordan Halls. Keep your elbow in and your eyes on the red. And go Hoosiers.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Hey, the show's over. Here I come, Coach Tonsoni.
You're going to have a busy night, Coach.
I got to get up early, go down to Bloomington for a football game, so she better
sorry.
stay upstairs. No, we got breakfast burritos in the morning. We got hamburgers post-game.
I thought you
beverages
gave up
on
tailgating.
ice. In the big sense. It's
Okay.
just my family and actually a teacher who's a Wisconsin season ticket holder. We generally go to all the IU Wisconsin games in the different places. So
That'll be
more
fun.
of a
I'm happy.
social thing. But anyway,
I'm going to be
good
sweating
show
out.
tonight.
I'm going to be sweating out everything until about 4 p.m. 4 p.m. Pacific tomorrow. It's a USC and Washington in quite a showdown. Not expecting a good result for my Trojans, but it'll be fun anyway. Two really good. It'll be some really fun quarterback play. I will enjoy that.
Given your general Twitter commentary on the state of USC's defense, look for
it ain't good.
Take the over on any Penix props that are out there tomorrow. Is that
it ain't?
is
I
that
mean,
your
well, the
advice?
thing is, the weird thing is that Washington has kind of been stumbling since they beat Oregon. I mean, it's still undefeated, but they haven't played as well as they should have, and so I don't know what to expect. But USC is usually the defense offenses get healthy against, and so. And Lincoln Riley knows he's friends with the defensive coordinator. He's gone after this year. I think it's one of those things where firing him midseason doesn't really solve anything. And so, because, just be one of his assistants running the exact same scheme that's flawed. But it should be that game should be fireworks. It should be really fun.
High scoring. Take the over.
Yeah.
What is it, 70 something, 70 and a half or.
Yeah. And again, you don't know. Washington hasn't been playing very well. USC, the thing is, everyone's talking about Caleb Williams, and like his numbers are actually better this year than last year, but the USC isn't winning as much. But they lost 4/5 of their offensive line, their top running back, and their top receiver, and so it's like I feel bad for him that he couldn't go out last year. He probably would have if he could. He was only a sophomore, so he's just kind of
unless he gets ownership, he's not going out this year.
That is such a that is. Like, okay, the guy has an entire team of agents around him. Do you think they don't know that the NFL doesn't let you take an ownership stake? Like, there's so many.
I saw that.
There's so many.
It definitely didn't come from the big league, did it?
No, and he's a smart kid. Do you think he really thinks he's getting team ownership as a rookie? No, there is something where he and his dad have said like,
Andy.
He's really happy at USC. So if the number one pick is going to be a team that, is always bad and doesn't protect their quarterbacks, then maybe he would come back. But he's not. That's like a less than 0.5% chance. Yeah. I mean, he's a smart kid and he's a good kid, and I don't like that people are taking shots.
Who brought that out anyway?
I forget. I think it might have been Mike Florio. I don't remember, but like that was a report that came out in like June, and then they just recycled it a few weeks ago.
Right.
There was nothing new.
Yeah.
And when it came out in June, people actually around USC like asked him about it. He's like, I never said that. Like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like, that's not even allowed. Like, why would I say that? So yeah, it's just stuff like that angers me.
I haven't talked to you. I went to the Notre Dame USC game up in South Bend.
That was not a good night for
not for you, but
fun.
the tradition. the band was there, and just seeing the uniforms and all of that. It
was probably
from
really
a
fun.
sports fan. It was it was a good experience.
No, I knew that was coming. I knew that they were not going to win that game. If that had been at home, I think it would have been a much better game. But I knew they were going to lose that game. So I was in Italy. I didn't even get up for it. I slept through it. I was just like, no. I think I woke up at like 7 a.m. and looked at my phone. I'm like, yeah, that's about what I expected, and went back to bed.
All right, everybody.
I'm glad you got to go. I'm sure that's a fun game to go to.
It's a great atmosphere, and
I've
my
been to
wife
a couple
is
Notre Dame games, but I haven't been to
she likes to go to these big events, and then my son, we're going to try to do a football or basketball event of something non-IU big, to experience. So that's my new venture is to find. We went to Vegas last year.
Go to the Coliseum next year. Watch a Big Ten game at the Coliseum. When you think Big Ten,
it's in the works already.
You think LA Memorial Coliseum when you think the Big Ten. So just.
Well, IU plays at the Rose Bowl next year, September 14th.
Yep,
so
they do.
My youngest son already texted me about it. So
that you could get tickets for like $1 for that, because UCLA doesn't start school until like the end of September because they're on the quarter system. So nobody will be at that game. It will be completely empty.
IU finally gets to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, and there might be more IU fans than UCLA fans at that one. It's
All right, fellas, have a good evening. We will see.
Storied Big Ten rivals like that get together.
All bets are off.
Such tradition.
Yeah.
All right.
Good night, everyone. Have a great weekend.
All right. See you.